A Funny Taste in Music with Andrew Bird.
Hello, welcome to A Funny Taste in Music. Haven't seen you for a while. It's not been your fault, has it? I haven't done any episodes. I took a little bit of time off because I was writing a tour show. That takes some effort, and having an extension done, and that takes making a lot of coffee. So been a bit busy. Sorry about that. Sorry. So yeah, I've been writing a tour show. I'm going on tour starting very soon, October the 1st and 2nd. I'm in Northampton. So I just go to my website, andrewbirdcomedian.com, for all the tour dates. If you've enjoyed any of these chats, talking about comedy and music, come and see me on tour. I'd say I'm probably funnier when I do a gig. All right. So yeah, come and see me on tour, basically. Now, yeah, I've really enjoyed doing the podcast. I haven't done one for a while, so this has been great to do another one. And with my mate, Jarlath Regan. I didn't tell the story. We didn't get to this on the podcast, so I can tell it now very quickly. Me and Jarlath met in Kinsale. Jarlath is from Ireland, so I met him in Ireland. And it's nice when you meet someone out of England and then they move to England and you become mates. And I met him in Kinsale, the Kinsale Comedy Festival, which was an absolute shit show. I think it might have been mentioned on this before. It was a load of gigs that were organised without any people actually knowing they were going to happen. So it was basically just like a box plonked in the corner of a bar with like a Carlsberg sponsored backdrop on the back, and that constituted a comedy festival. So we were basically going into a pub uninvited and telling people who were just drinking in a pub, right, comedy's happening now. We were doing comedy despite people's wishes, basically. And one night in one of them, it was English blokes actually, said, we've got 1,100 euros, we'll give you this money not to do the gig. They were trying to pay us not to do the gig. It was awful. We took the money, didn't do the gig. And then we were made to do it. Anyway, so that's where I met Jarlath, and I instantly got on with him, like kind of in a way you do when you're in a bad job with somebody and you get on to just get through it. We were like that, and we've been mates ever since. And he's kind of one of them people that, you know, the people you think, I bet he still listens to music. I bet he's still bet he gets into new bands. He has that look. So, but I've never really spoke to him about music, so I was looking forward to this. He's a good man. He does a podcast called An Irishman Abroad, which is the people he's interviewed is incredible. Some of his interviews, I was quite nervous interviewing him because, he knows what he's doing, and I clearly do not. So here is Jarlath Regan. Listen to him, enjoy him, donate to the Patreon page. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast to pay for stuff, that would be good. I can do more of them. I'm going to be doing a few, not as many, but I'm going to be doing a few. If you're like an eccentric millionaire and if you're money laundering, launder it this way. Why not? I could help you. It doesn't have to be legal, does it? It does. All right, forget that. Forget it. Anyway, here's Jarlath. Hope you enjoy it.
A Funny Taste in Music. The interview next.
Let's make a podcast. Go. So thanks, Jarlath, for doing it.
Delighted to be here.
Appreciate it. Because you're pretty busy with your own podcast. Should mention that straight away. Irishman Abroad, brilliant podcast. And thanks to that podcast, you got me into, because I don't know about you, I always remember the people that get me into albums and get me into bands, and you're now on that list.
Oh, really?
You got me into a band I was already into, but I'd kind of sort of stopped listening to a bit, and then you really got me back into them. Do you remember? It was Snow Patrol.
Oh, yeah. God. And they, they've had such a kind of up and down journey as a band. I mean,
that's just with me.
They were so close to quitting. They're so close to just go and forget it. It's just never going to happen for us. And then Final Straw came along. And I got the chance to obviously talk to Gary Lightbody, the lead singer of Snow Patrol, about that. And I think that so much of that journey for bands and comedians is the crossover, because there's so many times in comedy that you just think, fuck this.
Yeah.
What the fuck am I doing this for? It is beating your head off a wall. So I often am drawn to bands that I can relate to the story as much as anything.
Yeah, I have that with bands. If the music's brilliant, that's great. But if there's a story as well, that's one of the first things I do when there's a band I like. I sort of Google them and go, oh, please be from somewhere interesting or have some story of some sort so I can like you even more. If they haven't, I'm like, all right, fine. But I didn't, with Snow Patrol, I didn't really have that before. I just absolutely loved the first song that I heard, which was a song that turned it round, Run.
That album that they produced, I thought should have done a lot better. And I don't know about you, like there's the same with stand-up specials, that I look at certain stand-up specials and I go, that's one of the best things that's ever been made. How do more people not know about that?
Yeah.
So there's also that element to music, isn't there?
I think that with albums all the time. I get it wrong all the time. I think, how does everyone not know about this album? And then I think that about albums that everyone do know about. But that album that you're talking about, that were Wilderness or Wildness.
Yeah.
Maybe that didn't help. The name wasn't clear enough.
I don't think it did, actually. You're right. You need a name that trips off the tongue.
But that out. So I'd kind of, with Snow Patrol, I absolutely loved Run, that song. I loved the video for it as well, where they look skint in the video as well. They look skint. And there's the motorbike, and there's a big fire and all that. And it just, as soon as you see it, you can't help but watch it. And it's just still one of my favourite songs, Run. It's such a good song. And
it's
I
so
thought,
funny though, because they write music that either punches you in the throat with emotion, or people just go, "No, this isn't doing it for me." Because there's songs on that Wildness album that I can't listen to without getting emotional. Like I
that
fill
you can't
up.
listen to without getting emotional. I thought you needed to finish that sentence quicker. I thought you said the songs I can't listen to. But no, without getting emotional. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, he's gifted, and so is that guy Johnny McDade who writes the songs with him. I mean, they're all part of the songwriting process, but Johnny McDade is, the member of the band who's married to Courtney Cox, and he's written some amazing stuff outside of the band. And he wrote a song with another Irish songwriter, Foy Vance, is one for the listeners to look up.
Yeah,
look up Foy Vance if you're listening to this right now. Just head to your music app and look up. It's spelled Foy Vance. Now he has a song called "Only the Artist," and again, oh my God. I just find music and comedy so vast in that way that nobody in the mainstream really knows who Foy Vance is. He looks like a kind of a mix between Salvador Dali and a pirate. He's just got this fucking soul.
Yeah.
And a way with words, like the way people think of Dylan Moran's way with words in comedy.
Yeah.
The economy of language. Like that song, Only the Artist. Look it up now and make it part of your life, because it just soars. And again, he and Johnny McDade write for other people and stuff. They wrote a song for, what's her name? Alicia Keys.
Yeah.
And it came out at the start of the pandemic. And it just got buried. You don't think that happens to big artists, do you?
No.
That they could release something and that it would fall into the abyss. But the song was Underdog, and again, I like when you say funny taste in music, I like everything. Like I'm the opposite of Sean Walsh, Blink 182. I'm like everything.
Oh, yeah.
Give me it all, and I will appreciate parts of it all.
I mean, I don't think he that was such a good sales pitch you just did. for hang on again, Foy,
Foy, F-O-Y.
Yeah, for Foy. I mean, when you started, I wasn't even confident enough to say I haven't heard of him because I thought it might be a she. So I didn't even jump in and go, I haven't heard of, because I didn't even know. But I don't. That was such a good sales pitch. Make it part of your life. That's sometimes when music is so good, you think, how are people living without this every day?
Yeah.
But
so you're a playlist guy. Are you? You like this is when you pitched all the show to me, and you mentioned albums. It's so funny that the place of albums is dying, and that youngsters are playlist people. And artists are actively constructing songs with, ringtones in mind and hooks at the start of the song. You have to hit them in the first 30 seconds. All of that stuff is now commercial consideration. Are you still an album guy on the drive, or are you, I'll put together the most epic post-gig playlist?
I am such a Luddite. It's actually quite embarrassing, even to people, even older people than me, sort of go, oh, come on. Even I'm making an effort now. But no, I should start making playlists on Spotify for the way home. That would be, I would enjoy doing that. Yeah,
no, it is so much fun. And but I don't know, like you're such a worker and a hustler that like I sometimes look at people who go, I've made this playlist, and I'm like, where did you get the time to do this? Exactly, that's something that teenagers do because they're literally not allowed to do anything.
No, I'm still, not only am I still full album, this might blow your mind, I'm still CD in the car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's you.
Yeah, 4 CDs in my hand while driving. I'm going to cause a pile up one day going,
do you have a CD changer, or is it literally take out that one, put it in the case?
One at a time. The other day I listened to a CD single. How'd you feel about that?
I mean, it's the modern equivalent of having a gramophone in the car. That's what you are doing.
Yeah.
You're winding it up. I don't know, like, what the attraction is there, Andrew, because, like, even the CD, you can't even say that the CD experience as a medium is good, because like with a vinyl, it's like, there's a beautiful process involved. There's even the peculiarities and imperfections of the vinyl as part of the experience. But with CD, if it's in any way scratched at all, it's just an annoyance.
Yeah, there's nothing good about a CD, actually. You're right. It's a waste of plastic. As someone who's
there's that,
tries to recycle, it's a waste of plastic. It's a waste of paper, really. Yeah, they get scratched and they're ruined. I've bought more than a few albums more than once because the CD just got ruined. The bits of plastic always break. The case always breaks.
Well, obviously, there is the one thing you would say is that, like, sound quality, like the argument for MP3s, just to get real technical for a second, was that the reason why they can fit so many in your phone is because they are condensing the sound and doing away with parts of the sound that your ear doesn't need. So the file itself is smaller. Right. Whereas on the CD, they've got the space to put down the highest definition of sound possible. So you probably are getting a better experience.
I'm not noticing that. No way. And it's funny, though, that what you said then about records. I wonder at the start, well, they didn't know any better. It must have blown their minds having records, but the crackle and the hiss and all that. Yeah. There must have been a point where people started buying tapes and they were like, cool, thank God we don't have that anymore.
It's so funny that they couldn't figure out how to do away with the crackle. That, like, there was probably some scientists working on it going, look, we found a substance that you can make a record. There's no crackle.
Yeah, some music geek went, no,
I like it.
No, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that bloke. But but so from that interview though, I was going to say, I was obsessed with that song Run, and then there was Chasing Cars. That album was they went massive. That's one of those maybe one song a career for a band where you have a song that just that's like part of British music. Even if you don't like it, you have to admit that's a great song. That's
global music. I mean, it was Grey's Anatomy that blew that up, wasn't it? Appeared in Grey's Anatomy.
Global,
and suddenly they could fill stadiums in America. But like, isn't it mad though that like it so easily couldn't have happened? Like, it's just it's such a knife edge.
You said they were doing gigs where they were staying at the audience. They were asking the audience, is there anyone we can stay at your house after the gig?
Isn't that mad?
To 20 people, and then Run was coming out a few months later.
Yeah.
And then they were in the charts, and that was it.
And I sound like they're really the most ultimate Snow Patrol fan, but I guess when I'm doing those interviews with somebody like that, and the record label has given me, kind of an advance listen, and I've got an hour and a half with the guy, and I just break my neck researching it to the point where I'm so invested in the story by the time we sit down that even though I wasn't a huge, I had known loads of albums, I just liked them and their stuff that most people knew. By the time I was sitting down with them, I was so on board. That's probably why when I came to you, I was like, you've got to get on board with Snow Patrol. And I did it. I sold them to you. Now you're fully in the band.
Well, I already was, but then I fell away because when they went massive, then they were doing like duets with Cheryl Cole on telly, and I was like, oh no.
Were they?
Yeah.
Were they? Oh my
They went
God.
really mainstream and really poppy, and then it went all a bit poppy and bit too big, and I was, that's the thing with music fans. We're like, you want a band that no one else knows about, and you complain no one knows them, and then when everyone knows them, you're like, no, too big now. So I did that with Snow Patrol, did that whole thing. And then I could have easily not listened to that album, Wilderness, not even bothered with it, just like, whatever. And then I heard your interview and then bought it the next day. And it's one of them albums where every song on it, they're rare, very rare. Every song on it is brilliant. Every song could be a single.
100%. Every single one.
Single Empress, I think, is probably maybe the best thing they did. And then I did a warm-up on the McIntyre Big Show, and they were on playing at the end. So thanks to you, I could say hello to Gary Lightbody and have a reason to say hello to him. I went, I'm friends with Jarlath, who interviewed you. And he said, I think I told you this, and he said, oh yeah, he was really good. He'd done his research. I was like, all right, I'll tell him that.
Well, that's the ultimate compliment, I mean, isn't it? I mean, I never understand when people don't do it, and I won't keep harping on this because obviously I'm not the only person in the world who does research, but I can never quite get it when you see like big name interviewers sit down and go, tell us about the book, or they're blank on information such as you were adopted. I mean, know this. Like, I do think some of it goes back to Roy Keane. As much as like Roy is in the zeitgeist now, as a youngster growing up in Ireland, Roy Keane formed so much of what young men believed excellence and professionalism meant. He wasn't just what some people thought of over here, which is like, he's mad, he's a nutter. And like, we saw him as, no, if the standards aren't up to scratch, then you have to call that out at the end of the day. That's not okay. I'm pretty proud of my Roy Keane impression.
It's not bad. That's not bad.
His quote was, fail to prepare to fail. And that went into the minds of all young lads, I think, and certainly went into my head in terms of my exams in school and all of that. And now in the interviews, I prepare for interviews because I'm so scared of there being a moment where they say something and I have no fucking notion what they're talking about. The panic of that I can't live with that. I get sweats thinking about.
I've become very comfortable with it. It's happening now. I think the listeners they'll recognise it. I'm really glad to hear you're a big Roy Keane fan. I'm a massive Roy Keane fan.
Massive.
And I'm not a Man United supporter, but I support team. Well, I don't support teams. I go through phases of supporting players. Like I want a team to win because I love one player, and that's why I like Man United in the late 90s, early 2000s, because I loved Keane, loved Scholes, loved Giggs. I mean, even if you hate Man United, you've got to admit that like core of British and Irish players was incredible.
Yeah, Dennis Irwin was the unsung hero for me, and I'm a hardcore Liverpool fan. I wouldn't go as far as all the other names that you mentioned there, but
yeah. But
Roy and Dennis,
fair enough. But even
Dennis,
you still love Keane though.
Yeah, I mean, look,
because you can't not.
He's really come into his own of late as well. I mean, he's not perfect, and that was always the thing. He was never perfect. He did things that he regretted. I mean, the Alfie Gunnar Haaland tackle is the one that gets brought up all the time, where he essentially, held a grudge for a couple of years and then exacted revenge on the field of play.
I think it's one of the great football YouTube clips where he then goes and shouts in his ear when he's on the floor.
I know, it's so...
It's savage, just like a film.
It's savage, it's full on like but it was also kind of within, his... view of battle, and that this is a war. It's why he hates players swapping jerseys. You shouldn't be smiling. What are you doing smiling on the pitch?
You're going to war.
You're going to war. What's to be smiling about? I mean,
it's funny though. I find that funny that there's probably English people think it's hilarious, and Irish people are watching him probably thinking, why are English people finding this funny? The man's talking sense.
Well,
that's exactly it.
Look, let's not beat about the bush. He was a divisive character, and there was time in Ireland where a good portion of the public felt that he was, a traitor who let the country down when they needed him most. When he walked out at the World Cup in Saipan, he did so for all of the things that we've talked about there, but some people were like, you've got to, regardless of how badly things are going with your coach, you can't walk off. And therein lies the contradiction and the fascination with the man, was that like he lives by these ideals, he does not compromise, but it's a war. You don't walk off the field of battle because you feel that the facilities and the equipment isn't good enough, or do you? I don't know.
So it's a good argument. In a battle you wouldn't go, well, these swords aren't up to much, are they?
Yeah, but like at the same time, if the commander-in-chief is trying to undermine you and you're trying to lead out the army, every man's got a breaking point, and I think he just broke. The other thing that people forget about that is, and I know that this has now become a football podcast, is that people forget that he'd had a really tough year that year with United. And so much of music is part of, you've mentioned it before in previous episodes, like when things are going badly, you have this thing that elevates you out of that setting and it takes you someplace else. When I watched the Roy Keane interview with Gary Neville, that people should really seek out on Sky.
It's great. I enjoy watching Gary Neville laughing at Roy Keane in a way like a proper mate or a brother would laugh when, like, come on, you're going too far there, but I still love you for it.
Yeah, I mean, when he says to him, you've got a bit of a thing about people being late, don't you? And Roy goes, yeah. Do you like people being late?
Yeah. There's that great story about he was meeting Ian Wright. Ian Wright tells it he was meeting him for breakfast. He said, I'll meet you at 9:00. And Ian Wright walked down at like 9:05 and he'd gone. And he rang him and went, where are you, Roy? I'm here. He goes, you were late. You weren't there. He went, yeah, I'm here now. Like joking. He went, Ian, you were late, and just hung up and went.
The window has closed. That's it. But in that interview, he listed the things that he was listening to. And I don't imagine that Roy Keane had a whole load of time for, based on what we're saying there, music in kind of just, okay, I'll listen to this. It'll cool me down.
Yeah.
I will, I need to decompress after the game. Like, to me, the function of music in my daily life, throughout my life, has been escape, and also kind of hype. Like, you and I have both had the experience, no doubt, of going to work in our job where you're like, I no more want to tell jokes right now.
Yeah.
And I've no energy. Like, you know what I'm talking about, where you're falling asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
And you've just had the most stressful day. Suddenly you've got to go up and be funny. And music can get you there. It really can, like, flip switches in your brain to make you go, right, I can do this. We can go.
Yeah, it's funny that sometimes on the way to a gig, music is just a background thing just to make the journey go by. But sometimes you think, well, there's a lot riding on this album choice because it's going to make or break this gig. Yeah. You get to a gig thinking, not only do I not want to be funny, I could really do with someone out of the audience giving me a cuddle right now after the day I've had. But yeah, an album on the way there. Well, so what if you're driving to a gig and you've had a hard day, you've just had admin rubbish to do all day, it's really got you down, there's been shouting and stuff, dinner was a mare to get ready, and you're leaving the house in chaos, and you get in the car and think, oh, and this gig, I hate this gig as well, this is going to be a battle, and I want to do some new stuff, I don't know how it goes, I've not had time to write it. What would you listen to on the way to a gig?
I mean, there's a bunch of scenarios being described there, isn't there? And I think that part of each one is basically the day. That, like, people think that comics are, at home busily preparing for their show, or that they're in some kind of holding pattern of just wandering around Seinfeld style observing the world. But
for a gig.
Yeah, in so many ways, your life continues. And then there's this part of the day at around 8 p.m. where you have to be somewhere to produce and, make people who've paid good money have their night out. And, if you think about your working day, if you're listening to this and you're going, at 8 p.m. in the evening, what are you doing? You're probably just got the feet up for the first time in the day. That's when Andrew and I go to work and go, let's go again. And you acquire a weird kind of fitness from this. But when lockdown kicked in, I don't know if you found this, adrenaline would start going through my body at 8 in the evening. Yeah. And it was just obviously, what would you call that, conditioning? I am getting itchy feet. I can't be here. I've got to be out and doing something. And also, I just needed people to applaud. Just give me a round of applause. So, in so many ways, I have a rule about going to a gig: no music.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, and it was actually Louis C.K., God rest him, who no, Louis still a going concern, but he had said that is counterproductive, and that went into my brain that, like, am I giving myself the best opportunity to succeed if I'm off somewhere else or dancing along to something in the car? So I, a while ago, started to observe no music on the way, and it's the reward on the way home. And in so many ways, it makes you appreciate and value that music when you get it. But when I'm trying to get to a show, I will listen to previous sets, which sounds so batshit bananas.
I've started doing this.
Have you?
Because I heard a couple of people say this. Paul Sinner said a lot of his ideas are crystallised in the car, driving to a gig. John Richardson says about he has music on low that he's not really that bothered about in the background, and he thinks about material. And I started to think of the wasted hours that I've spent in the car with music on, staring blankly, thinking of nothing, because I'm kind of listening to the music, kind of not thinking about anything.
Yeah, you're just in an isolation chamber. You've got an isolation chamber where nobody can disturb you. You're kind of, the way sometimes your best material will come to you when you're doing the dishes or hoovering.
Yeah.
this is the perfect similar activity that can kind of be done unconsciously driving, where if you just keep chatting away or going over bits. Tommy Tiernan does it. I know
that's all I need to hear.
And
That's
Zari.
all I need to hear.
Yeah, Tommy Tiernan, off you go now. That's enough
Yeah.
to know that this
That's
works.
so funny that I do that exact thing as well. Is on the way home, podcast or album as a treat for having a good gig.
It's a reward.
But now I've got a tour coming up. I've even started recording myself and listening to it on the way home. I mean that.
I wouldn't do that to yourself. I really think on the way home.
But you deserve a treat.
I remember it was David O'Doherty that said to me that that's the fresh time and that you can't lose that window. Directly off stage, there has to be like a football player, a rugby player has a performance notebook of fresh afterwards. You've much better sense of what exactly worked, when it worked, what felt right. And that you blow that by getting pissed or going straight into watching a movie or something. And that I think that this is again a mark to your professionalism, Andrew. I said it to my wife this morning. Like, Andrew's a hustler. Like he works. Like you definitely put in the hours, and that's obviously part of it.
People seem to have that impression of me. I don't feel like I do. I don't feel like I do.
People who work hard never think they work hard.
Well, I feel like I'm constantly doing the thing of spending all day answering about 9 emails and swapping washing into the tumble dryer, and then I'm at a gig.
Stuff done. This is it.
It's quite funny, that idea of there might be a funny line in that of the audience don't realise a comedian on stage, the amount of shit he's blocking out to get through this gig.
And the amount of shit that he's done that day, he or she has lived a day, like up to that point.
Yeah.
Like they just think that I assume they think that you're just hanging. Like I used to look at comics before I was a comedian and go, imagine how relaxed his day was up to now. Because it's part of the not showing them the strings that like you kind of wander on, shamble on with a drink in your hand, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah. Yes, took everything to get there. But, so that's quite good that you don't listen to music on the way there, that you put in that. That is important, that time. But so what was the music because I know you've got a brother and a sister.
Mm-hmm. 2 sisters. Yeah.
Oh, 2 sisters, yeah. What was the growing up? What was the music? Because I always have this slightly stereotypical in my head image of all Irish people had music in their houses, and they at least 2 people in the house played an instrument, and they'd all sing at least once a day. They'd all get together and sing.
It's a very accurate stereotype. It is very, very accurate, but weirdly it doesn't apply to my house. I think most Irish houses there is a traditional musical instrument in the house of some sort, whether it's a bodhrán, which is the old Irish drum with the stick. You might have seen Sharon Horgan play it in the last season of This Way Up. It's a wonderful drum that can just do anything and accompany any song and suddenly give it a Celtic feel. There's usually a guitar of some sort in every house in Ireland. Like, it is kind of beautiful that that's there. But weirdly, my parents were mad for us all to play instruments, but then never really invested any time in making that happen. And I think that that's partially because it just tended to just happen in their generation, that people found guitars, they found accordions and pianos and learned to play them from the people around them. They were mad for us all to do it. They wanted sing-songs in the house, but they never accommodated it or created it. And it's only later in life that songbooks have appeared, and now that all the kids have moved out, my dad will be in the kitchen singing songs to himself from songbooks that we probably needed around as kids. But I was I felt like we didn't have much money at all. So that was probably a big part of it. Those things were expensive. A guitar, piano, just beyond the realm of, you know, there is a football outside, can you go and kick that for a while, rather than lessons and all of that. But you're right in asking about brothers and sisters, because when you're the youngest, your choice in music is irrelevant. You will listen to what we are playing you, and that is that. So the first songs I can remember ringing through the house, and no bad thing, was The Boss. Bruce Springsteen woke up our house every morning. The drums and that intro to Born to Run, like, may as well have been my alarm clock.
Right.
And like, I didn't appreciate it until much later how epic that intro is and how perfect it is for the morning. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest, that opening intro and that, like, it's just unbelievable. My brother's so into Bruce Springsteen.
So that was your brother, not your dad?
Yeah, so he works in horse racing now, and seemed to have a bizarre ability to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning without even, like, there was no, it felt like he never woke, like, took a time to wake up. His eyes opened, he was out of bed, preparing the house and mucking out stables, and he was just up and at it. The rest of us are like dragging ourselves like zombies out of the bed. He's downstairs clapping his hand, dancing around the kitchen to Bruce Springsteen. So there was an element of, fucking hell, Bruce Springsteen full blast in the morning every single morning.
Cool, yeah.
But that was what we listened to. That album, Born in the USA, like, just, I mean, you know the way there's certain album covers that, like, you just remember.
Yeah, they look like
Always.
a bit of artwork in themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have that on your wall. That would look cool on your wall.
Completely. Like, people, we forget how little advertising would have, you know, crossed your field of vision in the 80s at that time. So there was this glistening American flag, back pocket hat hanging out of it, you know, The Boss. And I just remember that music so vividly from that time. And then, of course, the girl, like, he moves out first, like, he's the eldest by a distance, and he didn't, before he moved out, there began this kind of rivalry between Michael Jackson and Bruce Springsteen in our house, where it was like, if you are getting to play Bruce Springsteen, it must be followed by a Michael Jackson song. There is one radio in this house and you may not monopolize it. So, you know, Michael Jackson took over our house, like, to a ridiculous extent. Have you had anyone on who's had this same thing, where you had Michael Jackson in your house at all times?
No, I don't think so.
And no one has said this.
No,
because I can't
so.
be the only one. Maybe it's because you kind of can't really talk about it anymore, and that it's not cool to say this. But there was a time when,
no, it's
Michael
not cool
Jackson
to
was
say
the
when I was a
biggest
young
artist in the
boy,
world.
Michael Jackson was in my house a lot.
yeah,
That
he's
is
there
not
constantly, looking in the window. But, like, he was, people forget how big he was, like, how big Michael Jackson was. Like, it was, what would be, he would K-pop and Ed Sheeran, you know, Taylor Swift, like, that level of undeniable superstar with his face on every product, like Pepsi, and, you know, all of that period was just like, there's no getting away from Michael Jackson. And it seemed like we were living in this age of, because that was the whole narrative of Michael Jackson, was he's the greatest, the king of pop, the greatest artist ever to have lived. He is our Elvis, was how it was sold to us. And, you know, there was some truth in it. Like, he was an absolute musical genius, an incredible dancer, and creating media and videos that, you know, even with all of the controversy, that stuff still stands. For whatever it stands for, it still holds up. So at that time, I was fully obsessed with Michael Jackson and used to dream of getting to go to Neverland Ranch. Like, that is fully my childhood.
Oh God, yeah. So, again, it's terrible. That
Dark,
sounds,
didn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible. That sounds bad now, but you do forget. I remember being a kid. I remember how massive Michael Jackson was, and you forget that. Like if you look at, well, people now forget how massive Britney Spears was, but if you look at all of those huge stars, like none of them come as close as what he was at that, and that was without the internet. Any of that, he was just and he could do it all. He wrote music, brilliant singer, brilliant dancer, brilliant show, all of it.
Yeah, he had a movie,
and girls liked him, and boys liked him.
Yes,
you were allowed to. Girls were allowed to like him, and boys were still allowed to like him.
Yeah,
there was not many of them, as in music wise. But yeah, I had a movie as well. Jesus. And the videos as well.
No, he was omnipresent. And also there was just so much. There was also there was an element of, and you can see it's like a cult nearly, that as much as Taylor Swift is a huge megastar, and so is Ed Sheeran, there's no one going around going, Ed Sheeran lives in a oxygen chamber and he has a monkey who's his best friend, and there's no controversial kind of people going defending Ed Sheeran, going it was a political position that you held, that I will not hear of these awful rumours that are spreading about Ed Sheeran. To a degree, Britney is that. I mean, there was the whole stop, leave Britney alone. I mean, that's as close as it gets. But she's not at the peak of her powers when that was going on. There was so much. There was news stories about Michael Jackson, cover of tabloids every day, most days, and it was always some mad shit. He bought the Elephant Man's bones, and if you were a Michael Jackson fan, you weren't just learning moves, learning how to moonwalk, wearing white socks and slip-on shoes to school. You were actively defending him from Bruce Springsteen fans and U2 fans who were like, he's a weirdo. He's nothing but a weirdo. that was a whole thing that you had to deal with as a Michael Jackson fan at the time.
Oh yeah. You I didn't hear that Elephant Bones one. I did. He was I wonder what it is, because he kind of he went a bit mental, and then there was that thing with Britney Spears where she went a bit mental, but it can't be
a bit.
Yeah, well, that's the thing,
man. I mean, the thing.
Yeah, but they can't both be it can't be a coincidence. What they're both, it's just both them.
Well, there must be child stars. I mean, the child star thing, so Mikey got a part in, as my son got a part in Christopher Nolan's movie Tenet.
What?
And it was tiny thing. And, he was keen. And just the thought process, we went through all of the process of going, what is this that we're looking at here? Really looking at what is child acting and child performance. And just in I think we're reaching a kind of point of reckoning with gymnastics and young kids being forced into rigorous adult training. I think we are going to get to a point with children performers where we'll look back and go, what the fuck were we doing? We screwed up all, show me an example of the perfectly evolved former child star.
Yeah, which ones are there? Hang on.
Justin Timberlake.
That's the one I was thinking, yeah. But
maybe. And only maybe. And also, maybe. JT might tell you himself, I've had to get a lot of work.
Yeah. Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay.
Corey Feldman.
I mean,
these are ones that these are examples of ones that have not gone so well, that have struggled. That's a good question. What child stars have navigated it and come out the other end?
And come out the other side. Maybe Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, was she a child star? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Macaulay Culkin, I find that constantly fascinating that people are annoyed with him for not being 8 years old. But look at him. Look at this photo of him. He's grown up. Yeah. Let's have a look at a photo of you when you're 8 and put it next to now. See what you look like. Leave him alone.
Yeah.
Not Home Alone, but leave him alone.
I mean...
See, he gets that all the time.
Yeah, look, he, like, by the sounds of things, he didn't have a chance. I mean, like, didn't he have to, like, divorce his parents to get his money? Like, this is the other thing, that there is so much opportunism in it. In the same way as Edinburgh really exploits and really shows you that the entertainment business on even that level is all about, they'll do it for the opportunity. They'll do it. You don't need to pay them. They'll do it, and we can profit. Yeah, it's just a bigger scale. I mean, the kid will do it. The kid likes going to McDonald's. He got to meet Michael Jackson. People think it's cute, and the movie did well. It's crazy stuff. But I don't know if you watched the Finding Neverland. Like horror show.
Yeah.
That, like, Macaulay was the gaslight,
the kingpin.
In so many ways, that it was like, well, if Macaulay Culkin says that Michael Jackson didn't do those things, I believe him. Yeah. And that's like in line with Jimmy Savile, that there were certain kids that he didn't abuse. That you're like, fucking hell, these guys were evil. And what's mad is, Andrew, there's millions and millions of people that will fucking turn off this podcast right now if they were to hear me say that, because they still believe he didn't do shit.
Yeah. So, but do you still like his music though, Michael Jackson? Can you separate?
I made a decision a while ago to take the shit off my phone, to take all of his songs off my phone.
All right.
Yeah, like I just did. I think it was after Finding Neverland where I was like, you know what? I had great times with that music, but I need a break. And I'm somebody who owns, The Making of Bad, which again, 1987, I was 7 years old. That album was everything to me. If you think about the build up to that album, it was the first album, 7, where I knew this album is coming. And the way the albums used to be released at that time, where it was like, it's unlike anything like we know today. An album being released at that time was, a global event. And that became like the biggest selling album of all time within weeks. And I own documentaries on how it was made and behind the scenes stuff. I'm a little bit obsessed with that album.
All right.
And but still, I'm like, nah, I've had enough now, because every time you stream it onto your phone, they do get paid. Like the estate does receive a payment for every stream that you're doing. So just. I took it off, but I still, you can't argue with that music. It's so fucking good. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's like Chris Rock saying about Eddie Murphy, that Eddie Murphy could get away with stuff that Chris Rock can't get away with, because that's how good he was. Chris is like, I'm not that good. And he says that's always the benchmark. He's like, Eddie Murphy could arrive 4 hours late. People are like, Eddie Murphy's here. If Chris Rock arrives 4 hours late, they're like, fucking hell, Chris, where were you?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that is good. He's a comedian. He's so good as a comedian that he can be an arsehole now. That's a level I'd love to get to that. I've really got to think about how I behave still. That's the level I'm at. I love that. But so after Michael Jackson, because I remember that. I do remember, because now, that's quite sad now that I know an album's coming out because of there's a new video by that band on YouTube, or there's a thing on Facebook. But it used to be like on the news, an album was being released. It was an event. It was great.
Yeah, so, the countdown. Yeah. This album is coming. Get ready. There'd be sneaky bits floating around. There'd be, a teaser, or even, you'd get a trailer. Remember that? You'd get or a video would arrive that would give you a snippet of it. I mean, just a different world.
So,
And I think that Jay-Z tried to recapture that with an album a couple of years ago, Magna Carta, I think it was called. And it just didn't work. That's just not how people consume stuff. It's not one stream of people consuming stuff. It's so splintered.
yeah. So that was one of the first. Was that one of the first albums you bought then, Michael Jackson? And then do you remember buying it? Or?
But again, I didn't buy it. My sisters bought it. I mean,
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I was so far off having enough money to buy an album or a CD at that point. Like,
so when did you
album
finally wrestle control of music in the house, and what did you bring to the house?
I never got control of music in the house, let's be totally honest. The home stereo, I guess we had one home stereo in the kitchen, and that was through which everything came. And then my sister went off to college. She buys her own stereo, and that suddenly there was room, there was space. I was 14, and I guess probably no small part due to Michael Jackson, I was into hip hop, black culture, and basketball. I mean, Ireland, people forget Ireland at that time, how grey and conservative it was. I mean, Playboy magazine only came into the country in 1994. Not that that's a benchmark for, freedom of thought, but it is a signifier of something. I mean, lack of availability of contraception, abortion, gay marriage, all of this stuff was very much like, you didn't think that you were under control of the church, but it was a very, very conservative country. And I do remember just finding it quite grey, and looking to England and being like, wow, it just seems so liberal and free. I remember going on my school tour, and we passed through England to get to France on the bus. And, you'd stop at service stations, which I didn't know years later would be somewhere that I would be an awful lot. But I remember seeing like British school kids and being like, fucking hell, look. They were like different creatures.
Really?
Compared to us.
That different?
Yeah, man, because I just felt like, this sounds crazy, but I just didn't feel like we had access to a lot of stuff. Clothes, music, and like, it sounds stupid, but like food.
No,
I just felt those British kids just looked healthier than us.
Really? Even looking at kids at that age, you thought, God, they're looking good. They're probably on probably a broccoli, these kids.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, I just look back on that time, and you didn't feel deprived or anything, but like, you do realize that there wasn't much to go around, and that I was definitely drawn to American culture and American music, and basketball specifically because of the freedom of expression.
Yeah, you love basketball, don't you?
Absolutely.
You must have nailed The Last Dance.
Oh man, like The Last Dance for me is Blink-182 for Sean Watt. I mean, why would I watch anything else?
I was like that. That was that saved my mental health during lockdown 1.
Ah, yeah,
that got me through it. Every Sunday you had 2 episodes.
Soundtrack. It has that soundtrack. Like,
they put a lot of effort into that, didn't they?
Yeah, like they should have released the soundtrack. I really think that it has a box set ability. Like, they should totally release a collector's set for that, because the music, it kind of, his whole career kind of spanned my childhood and teens. So, a lot of my fashion choices are based around what was being worn then. And like, Irish sports were Gaelic football, hurling.
It's not very it's a great sport, but it's not glamorous, is it? Like basketball.
It's still amateur in that nobody's paid, and the idea of doing a step over a spin or anything fancy is still like looked down upon. you were a fancy Dan, inverted commas.
That's the exact opposite of basketball, isn't it? That's what it's all about in basketball.
Opposite. It was about showmanship. It was about trickery. It was just constant George Best.
What a description of basketball you've just stumbled on there. Basketball is constant George Best.
Constant George Best.
It's the highlights of George Best. Constant.
Turned up to 11.
Yeah.
And also in the George Best kind of, bell bottoms that basketball was so connected to clothes and culture that you would, sending away for these things that weren't available in Ireland at the time was a thing that someone would go to America and come back with basketball clothes. And, I guess a lot of my musical taste kind of came out of that. So the first kind of hip hop album that really crossed over into the mainstream in Ireland anyway wasn't NWA Straight Outta Compton, which essentially was banned in the country.
Was it?
It was the Fugees, The Score.
Yeah.
That was a colossal album, if you remember it.
I do.
Do you remember how much that was played?
Yeah.
It was absolutely everywhere. And you couldn't avoid it. It had everything on it, from slow songs to bangers, to quite, forthright political rap. So it kind of had a bit of everything in it. It was your tasting platter for hip hop. And also Lauryn Hill vocals. Fuck me, they were an amazing group when you look back on it. So that album was the first one I bought, and I fucking wore a hole in that thing. Listening to it, I completely drove my parents.
Well, it had a hole in it, but another one. you can't claim credit for that one.
There's two holes in it.
But that's I love that thing of an album that you think of that. It's got a different shine to it. It's played so much. It's suddenly gone matte. It's not even shiny anymore. But I never got the Fugees album. I never had the album. But I remember that song was
Killing Me Softly.
Every house party, as a teenager. What year would that have been? About 95?
Oh, we'll have to Google that.
I remember it was proper in your mid-teens, I reckon, 95, 96, something like that, I think.
So yeah, it comes out February 1996.
Oh, I did it. Oh, right. So yeah,
15.
That was so that was just when you started going to the pub and house parties. So it was important because that was everywhere.
What an album. And, there are so many tracks on it that people forget about as well. That Fuji La was the biggest, the biggest hit off it, I felt. Well, no, you're right. And then there's Ready or Not was the other song on it. No Woman, No Cry was on it as well. So that crossover into Bob Marley.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. It's funny. It's again, to relate it back to comedy. There's a right place, right time part to that album as well, isn't there? Because it wasn't their first album. They had another album 2 years before that, but it just hit. It just hit at the right time, and it was the soundtrack to the entire of 1996, which was also when the Chicago Bulls were at their peak.
That's what I was going to say. Why was that the right time? But that was why, wasn't it? Because and there was what Olympics was it? That was it Barcelona? It was because it was on The Last Dance, and they were saying about
that was 92, yeah,
92.
But
so
96
after that
was also. If you put it in a British context, it's Coming Home, The Lightning Seeds, Oasis was the other side of this. And not to get it, to go back to what I said originally, I do love all music. So I wasn't one of these guys who was I like this, so I have to hate everything else. And you remember that in school, that this kind of team thing, that it was like, if you like Oasis, fuck Blur. And like, I loved both bands. I thought they were both excellent.
Yeah.
People were like, what planet are you living on? You may not like Metallica and Ice Cube. You just can't like those things. But again, that's kind of the way musical taste has gone now. People have everything on their phone.
Good point. That's a good thing now. It's not as much, But I'll admit, I was a bit like that. I was a bit Oasis enough. I was a bit Sean Walsh, Blink-182. He's become an example, Sean Walsh now. Oasis was my Blink-182.
Really?
But I was a bit like that. And to the point where it's just taken me recent years that I've got into other stuff I didn't get into because of Oasis, which I do not apologise for. But to the one of them would be someone I know you like. I think you've mentioned before, Radiohead. And I've mentioned before because my brother was a massive Radiohead fan, and he was like, and he said, this is proper music. Oasis is just 3 chords, sounds all the same. And because I was such an Oasis fan, how dare you, like you say, I can never like Radiohead now. So it's taken me ages to get into Radiohead because of that.
Well, there was a stigma around Radiohead as well, if you remember, that they were depressing.
Yeah.
At that time. That, like, especially, like, I felt like if I had Radiohead in my life at a certain point where you're kind of coming to terms with life not being full of loads of potential and I can do anything, we can take on the world, we're just a little band from Manchester and we're going to fucking take over. I felt like Radiohead were much more like, life is not perfect. And there is misery in here. And we can make great art from that. But, like, there was something about it that it was, like, their stuff was so beautiful, but it was so, at times, it just felt so bleak.
Yeah. I think I was much more in the thing of Oasis. This is it's everything's going to be brilliant. It could take over the world. It's going to be amazing. I should have really been listening to Radiohead. Now I look back on it, they were much more my thing. Now I think about it, but I've got into them recently. Are you a big Radiohead fan?
I don't know if I can consider myself a big any fan, but I've definitely seen them live a couple of times.
Oh, have you?
And OK Computer was an album that I definitely broke up with a girl over.
You broke up with a girl over an album?
Over OK Computer, yeah. And
talk me through that.
Well,
we'll finish on this because I can't see how anything can follow this.
Well, like, everyone has a deal breaker, right?
Yeah.
We all have numerous deal breakers in terms of our relationships with people, and you have to have a line. So teaching my son this, it's like, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing, And I just loved OK Computer as an album. Again, another 1996 album, but the first one where I was like, I felt music kind of hit me in the eyeballs. Your eyes are hot listening to it. You're going, oh man, they've gone somewhere else with this, like everything we've listened to up until now. And it might have taken me until 1997. No, it came out in 1997, yeah.
Yeah.
So it might have taken me a while to get to it properly, because I remember when this breakup happened, I played her Let Down, and she said she'd never listened to the album OK Computer, and I was like, well, just listen to this. And it was a bit high fidelity in that I was like, well, yes, tell me you don't like Radiohead after listening to Let Down.
Right.
And you know the song Let Down, right?
Yeah.
And it finished, and she said, I guess I just don't like music.
Oh, wow. Not even fucking Radiohead made her not like music.
And I just
made her realise she doesn't even like music as a thing.
But I can remember dropping her off in the car and driving away going, well, that's the end of that. I don't like music is like saying, I don't like laughing. To me, we have nowhere to go from here. Music is the food of life. And it just lifts you and takes you places and accompanies you on journeys and will never let you down. Like it's like the most loyal dog ever. And music will never not be there for you.
Yeah.
And she says, I don't like music. And I just thought,
yeah, she's got
a robot. You're never from this planet.
I love the thought of you driving off like, well, won't be seeing her again. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I already like you, Jarlath, but you've just gone up a few notches. That's good.
I bet the listeners have similar stories.
Yeah.
Where they played something that was meaningful to them and to someone else, and they did a fart noise during it. They just thought, we're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you?
Oh, yeah. I've discussed it before. The girl, when I was 18, 19, I thought she was like my first proper girlfriend and that. And then she said about Stone Roses' song, I Want to Be Adored. She went, why would you want to be adored? And I remember that her and her friend going to the toilet and me and my mate looking at each other and going, what? Who are these people? Yeah. But the fact that, you drove away going, well, that's it. Oh,
what's funny about your one there is that she was attempting to do a joke.
I don't think she was. That was the thing.
Oh, no way. She thought those were the lyrics.
Yeah. And I was absolutely right in my choice of her as a human being, and I stand by it. Jarlath, it has been bloody great talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon, mate.
Cheers, man.
A podcast from producer Paul.co.uk.